All right, welcome back, everyone. I have a special guest today. I reached out to her on X, and I have Karla Stamps here, and she's been in the finance industry for over 20 years, and I really want to hear more of her story and her journey. So, welcome, Karla.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I mean, you're kind of new to X. I'm kind of new to X, and I've seen
Mhm.
a lot of stuff you're putting out there, and I found it super interesting. And I thought you'd have a lot of great information for my audience. But why don't before we
Cute.
get into it, why don't you maybe give a little backstory on your history and stuff?
Okay. Well, back before the crash of '08, I was a licensed financial planner and investment advisor. Worked with my brother in Birmingham, Alabama, and we did traditional financial planning and wealth management through alternative investments like REITs, oil and gas programs, and that sort of thing. I focused more on the financial planning side of things. After the crash of '08, I hung in there for about 2 more years. It was bloody. It was a terrible time to be in the investment in the wealth management business. And it just it was not good for me. So I decided to branch off and do something a little different. And Birmingham's a relatively small town in the grand scheme of things. And people who knew me and knew what I did knew that I was leaving that industry. And I started getting calls for some really unusual requests. Like the first one was a board member on a nonprofit that had horrible financial statements. Like she said, the balance sheet doesn't make any sense. The P&Ls don't make any sense. And I know you're a financial planner. Could you come in and take a look at their accounting software and their systems and see why these reports are so upside down? So I did that. And then after that, I got a call from another nonprofit who had heard that I did that. And I built a business really since about 2010 of doing triage for small businesses and nonprofits. If they get upside down with their cash flow, or for whatever reason, they just need a financial expert to come in and serve sort of as a mediator between them and their tax attorney and their tax CPAs or EAs doing their taxes. And I've built a career out of that, working with small business owners and nonprofits. I have a very small group of clients. I'm real picky about who I work with, and I want people who are picky about who they work with too. So it works out great. I work 100% remotely. So I take my work with me wherever I want to go. None of my clients are right here where I live. I have clients all over the country. So yeah, that's what I've been doing. In the past, though, I did teach financial literacy a lot. I did a lot of pro bono work back when I was a financial advisor, and that's really sort of where my heart is and where my passion is. So when I got into the online spaces, it was with the intent of doing like Finance 101, not investing so much as just financial literacy. Um, and so I've just kind of put my toe in the water with that a little bit. I did it over on TikTok and have a nice little following over there. And I'm just fairly new to X.
Yeah, I mean, X has been a lot of fun. I see a lot of good stuff, that you're putting out there. And some of the things I saw, talked a lot about like maybe RV traveling and kind of just seeing the world and things like that. So maybe you can touch on that a little bit.
Well, I have a nomad spirit, or I have wanderlust. I just want to be on the go all the time. That's one of the reasons I've never made a good W-2 worker. So I've been self-employed most of my life, but I'd always wanted an RV, always, since the time I was a little girl. And during COVID, I had the opportunity to buy one, and I did. And so for about 2 years, I downsized my work dramatically. I think I might have only had one or two clients left at that point in time, and took the RV and went out to national parks and state parks and did a lot of volunteer work, visited family around the country, and had a great time. And then at the end of 2 years, I was physically exhausted because RVing by yourself and two dogs it's pretty strenuous. And I had a pretty big rig, and I was towing my car on a dolly, so it was strenuous. But I'm going to get back out there one day. Can't get to Hawaii to see you, but I'll get back out there one day.
Well, I'll probably be in North Carolina, so we can maybe trade places or something. But But
Totally.
yeah, I love that because I think that's why I want to be like in the States where, you can just travel and go places. And
Yeah.
is that kind of where the whole financial literacy, maybe financial independence comes from, where it just allows you to have, like you saying, this wanderlust spirit and kind of just, travel and do things?
It does. It does, but there's another big piece to that too. I went through a huge transformation in 2004, 20 years ago. This was right about the time I entered that financial planning work that I was doing. I had divorced, and it was just a perfect storm of things happening in my life that I decided that how I had been living my life all those years was not really who I was as a person. I was sort of being a phony all those years. And I took an about face and became somewhat of a minimalist after that. So my lifestyle is very small in terms of my footprint in my hometown these days. I don't mind driving an old car. That's one of the things I jump in on with Twitter all the time. And people who drive the old cars and, preach about how awesome Camrys are, they get a lot of hate from people. But, you know, I could increase my income to buy a Beamer if I wanted to, or I could buy a Beamer with the income that I have. But I would rather spend that money on something else. Like the Beamer doesn't mean anything to me anymore. It did in my former life. That's all I chased. I wanted the big house and the big car and the name brand clothes and the expensive shoes and the expensive purses and the jewelry and I was obsessed with all of that.
Yeah,
And
I
then I
think
had
we've
to,
all been there. Yeah, I think
yeah,
we've all gone through that a little bit.
yeah. And once I gave, all those years, my friends and I would moan and groan about how, well, we wish we could take a month off and go travel, or we wish we could do this or that. And we were working ourselves to death to keep up appearances for these houses that we couldn't afford and for the cars and all of that. And then one day, I don't know, something just flipped in my brain. And I read a lot of books. It was books that really did it for me. Um, I realized I could turn that around and just start living a quasi retired life now if I could just gave up the huge house, and stopped wanting a new car every few years. And so that's the choice I made. I'm an outlier, I think, by doing that. But yeah, I don't worry about money anymore. It's kind of a non-issue. And I'm smart enough to know that I have privilege that has allowed me to get to this position to be able to say that. But I also don't mind saying I'm not a millionaire, nor do I really chase that anymore, in terms of having that much income coming in every single year. I chased it, but I don't anymore. I have so much more fun
Yeah,
now.
well, let's stay right here real quick. So, I mean, you're
Okay.
saying you're not a millionaire, but you probably easily could be if you didn't make this certain mistake that you kind of talk about on X. And one of your tweets that I kind of want to touch on, it says your biggest financial mistake is not keeping every house you've owned. So
Oh
let's
my
dig
God.
into that a little bit.
Yeah. So I was interested in real estate from the get go, from the time I was very young. My first job was in an attorney's office. I was just answering the phone as a receptionist in an attorney's office while I was still in high school. And they did lots of loan closings. I mean, dozens and dozens of loan closings every single month. So I began to see all the real estate agents coming in, the buyers and the sellers. And then within a year or so, they moved me to a desk where I did construction loan closings. That was one of the main parts of my job. And my favorite builders, get this, I haven't told you this before. My favorite builders were firemen. They were working the kind of shifts that allowed them to build houses during the day and do their firefighting job also. And they were really successful at doing that. And this was decades ago. Things weren't quite the same for women then as it is now. Not that things are perfect now by a long shot, but I went to them as this 20-year-old and told them, I want to do what you do. And they said, no, you don't. No, you don't want to do what we do. That you'll be so discriminated against as a woman. You're never going to have subs that will follow your directions. If you tell them they've done something wrong, they're not going to listen to you as a woman. And then they said, nor are you going to want to work in the cold weather or the heat of the summer. And they talked me out of it. And I've regretted that my whole life. I have always regretted it. So I bought my first house at 19 and just immediately started thinking I need to rent this house out when I go to sell it. I don't need to keep it. I need to rent it out. But I was in a marriage with a guy who had no interest at all doing real estate. It was just not on his radar. He was a company man. He was a good company man. He had no interest in that. And my family used to say things like, are you crazy? Do you want to answer phone calls about a running toilet in the middle of the night? So as a young person, those are the things that were said to me. You don't want to do that. No, that's crazy. So I built a house when I was like 22, 23 years old. We built one and I got to experience being in the midst of it. I had a GC, but I was there on the property every day watching what they were doing on lunch hours and at the end of the day and stuff. And then I lived in that house 10 years or so and I sold it. I should have kept it. That was my second house. I should have sold it. So I went through a divorce, bought a house of my own for the first time. It was a small, sweet 3-bedroom, 2-bath house and lived in it a good 10 years. And I decided I wanted to live closer to the city center because I was doing more work downtown. And it occurred to me, hey, I'm on my own now. I'm going to keep this. I'm keeping this house. I don't have a partner who's telling me that I've got to sell it. So I started asking around about property managers. And sure enough, somebody that I was working with in an office said, oh my gosh, I've got an awesome property manager. They only charge 10%. You're going to love them. They'll give you all the recommendations of what to do to make the house complaint proof and all, And I did that. And I've had that house a while now, and that's part of my retirement planning because the house is getting close to being paid off. So, and it cash flows on top of that.
So did
So
you get a lot of those things your family members or friends are telling you? Like,
I would say I did a post about this once, actually. If I have to say how much time I spent on that rental house in the course of a year, I'd say maybe 10 minutes, because the property managers handle everything. We have a threshold for repairs that they have, an automatic approval on, but really nothing serious has happened to it. It's, I think I've replaced a stove in 10 years or something, it's nothing. And it cash flows enough that if something does happen, like an AC, it will cover it. I'm not worried about it.
yeah, yeah. And like, we kind of talk about in some of the communities that I'm in, a lot of times you do have expenses or repairs or maintenance, but
Mhm.
if you really think about it, it's the tenant who's really paying for these repairs or maintenances, right? So, yeah, I mean, usually there is same thing. It's usually the people that aren't investing in real estate are going to try and talk you out
Yeah.
of it and tell you all these things that are going to come up. And I'm glad you finally, were able to hold on to it and prepare for your retirement and whatnot. But that's awesome. That's an awesome story and journey. But there's a couple other tweets that I want to dig into that, or even if they're called tweets anymore, but or X or posts or whatnot. But there's a couple, and you kind of touched on a little bit earlier about seeing companies' finances and businesses, and that's kind of your focus. But there was one you kind of posted about government spending. A little fantasy of yours is to access the federal and state budgets, the same way you do for clients. And what do you think you dig up if you were to see those type of information?
Yeah. Well, when I was growing up, there used to be jokes about how the government would pay like $600 for a hammer or, that kind of thing. And I guess that's still, that's just a childhood thing that I remember. I did have a chance once to sit on a citizens committee for budget approval processes. And so they put a request out to the town asking for accountants who would be willing to serve in the capacity of a citizen's budget review. And so they selected 6 of us, and I got to do that. So that's the first and only time I've ever seen behind the scenes of a city budget approval process. And I have a hard time keeping my mouth shut if I see wasteful spending, because I'm very, I'm frugal. I'm a minimalist and environmentalist and all of that. And this particular city they were spending like drunk monkeys on consultants. And I was appalled, just absolutely appalled at the millions of dollars per year they were spending on consultants without executing on anything. They were doing all these traffic feasibility studies, and well, they didn't like what that one said, so let's hire another one. And let's hire, So I got to see a little bit of that. And then another one recently in Birmingham, one of the suburbs, well, it's not a suburb, it's actually a small incorporated city adjacent to Birmingham. Gorgeous town, is very, just beautiful, lush trees and beautiful small original cottage houses, and it's just beautifully maintained. Anyway, they were on the news less than a year ago, where somehow they discovered that dozens of city employees were using credit cards that they were given for the work that they were doing for personal expenses. And they found out that it was millions, and they were just discovering it. They're not sure how many years it had been going on. And I wanted so bad to just go and offer pro bono. I'm a budget analyst. Can I please come in and take a look at this and see what's going on? I just think there's a lot of waste. And I see it in the individuals that I work with. I still do a lot of one-on-one personal financial coaching. That's not really my bread and butter, but I do it because I've just done it for so long. And when you get into someone's credit cards and checking accounts and see the kind of waste that they don't even realize that they have, that just sort of has trained my brain to want to seek out that waste, and I've saved clients tons of money over my career by ferreting out these things that they're paying for. On a microcosm of that is having a subscription to something that we've forgotten about, and we just keep paying that $9.99 every month. But I've worked for corporations that were paying out hundreds of thousands of dollars a year on something that they were no longer using, and I like finding that. I like solving puzzles like that.
Yeah, I don't want to get too deep into it, but I think a lot of it is, at least with individuals, or like you're saying, personal finances, at some point, the money runs out, or there's accountability there, where like you're saying, like the government and whatnot, I think that's the biggest thing. There's just no accountability there. And and we're seeing it on a bigger scale, where it's almost like they'll just print money or try to print their way out of things. And I think that's where a lot of the problems are. But so I think with the personal side of it, people, of course, some people do have bad habits, or some issues, but at least at some point that money or credit goes away, and then they have to address it, where the government side, like you're saying, it's just kind of a never ending funnel of money for them, or they'll just increase taxes to fund whatever their spending is. So I think that's a big thing. And like I said, I don't want to get too deep into that, but yeah. So yeah, I love a lot of the things you're putting out there. I think you're always making me think and kind of look at things a different way. And there is one that you kind of just, I think it was today, you said, you put out, that caught my eye, but it was about emergency funds. You put, having an emergency fund becomes unnecessary when you make far more than your monthly overhead, and you don't let lifestyle creep get out of your control. So we want to dig into that. I sounds like you said you got a lot of attention on that one.
Yeah, I had some people come after me for saying that. And the sentiment behind that thought runs deeper than we have time for right now. But I guess it was fueled by the finance gurus who put so much focus on you got to have that emergency fund, got to have that cash in the bank, you got to have 3 to 6 months of your overhead, cash in the bank, cash in the bank. And I'm enough of an outlier that I just believe there's other ways to do that. You could have there's just a lot of other ways you can do that. I don't think it's that simple. I don't think that's the nirvana to solving all of your financial issues is to have that emergency fund. People came out at me saying, like, what if you get cancer? Then what are you going to do, lady? Well, there are other financial tools that we use to protect ourselves from that. Disability insurance is one of those things. I've had my share of emergencies, and maybe this is the real sentiment behind it. I've my life has had a lot of ups and downs. I have been through through 2 divorces. I suffered from a debilitating case of depression a while back, and a lot of people say that doesn't even exist. But I went 18 months without being able to work. I laid on my couch or my bed for about 2 years. And I have survived all of that. I survived the crash of '08. I survived the divorces. I survived the depression. None of those were solved by a 6-month emergency fund. So I just think there's a lot of shallow emphasis paid on that. Yes, you've got to have it. And if you're a beginner just starting your financial journey, that's one of the first things you do is make sure you've got enough cash so that you're not putting emergencies on a credit card. But as I replied to one person, I was like, look, I'm old. Okay. I've been at this a long time. I have other streams of income coming in, and my overhead is exceedingly low. So an emergency, somebody said, yeah, what if you have to get a new car? Okay, my car was totaled in December of 23, less than 6 months ago. Did it bankrupt me? No. I just, it's a cliche to me. 3 to 6 months, emergency fund. It's a cliche that probably leads people to thinking that, oh, I've done that now. I've done it. I'm good to go. And it's not that simple. And taking care of yourself in an emergency is not that hard either. And letting go of the fear of financial catastrophe is part of who I am as well. Money has no hold on me anymore. So that was a lot of that sentiment as well. I've
Yeah.
survived so much crap already in my life that,
Well, I like how you put it too. It's a tool, right? Like,
yeah.
and there's a lot of tools out there, and it's also just figuring out how to access these different tools or use these tools a certain way. Like you're saying, like, like from the medical side, insurance or certain things or disability, there's tools out there. So it's also just figuring out how to access these type of tools and use them for whatever situation that you might encounter. So I like that. I like that. Super helpful. And like you're saying, it's not, even if you have certain amount of cash, that's not the like you're safe. You now you have this shield around you and you're protected from everything. So yeah, I like that. But it's funny. I mean, I can see how people would react to that and jump all over you for that one. And like you say, like we talked about a little bit earlier, X, Twitter, it does have some trolls or mean people out there and are trying to rile things up. But I love that. And it also, not all of your things too are finance related. You do have some that kind of, you know, touches like generations and things. And so you have one, like you said, you have a message to millennials and Gen Z moms. Like I see you. You're intelligent, you're informed, you are change makers. And where does that kind of stem from?
That's coming from, well, having a daughter, for one thing, but it's also coming from there being so much controversy post COVID about returning to the workplace, work from home versus work in the office. And what I'm witnessing in the younger generations in my own family is they don't want the typical rat race that we had. I was raised to believe you get a good job, you want that job security, you be a good employee, and you participate with the 401k or whatever, and you hang in there for the rest of your life. You move to another job so you can make a little bit more every chance you get. This what I witness in the Gen Z and the no Gen is it X Gen Z? It's Gen Z is
Gen Z, yeah.
they're like 20 right now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what I have in my family. They don't want that. They want more of a balance in their life. And so I have found that balance in my life kind of late in the game. And I admire them for like putting their foot down and saying, I'm not doing that. I'm going to find a way to support myself that's not the traditional rat race. So they get a lot of criticism for that. A lot of people are saying they don't want to work. They don't want to work. The kids I know, they want to work, and they're passionate about change for the better of the world that they live in. They just don't want to do it the way the boomers did it or the way the Gen Zers did it. And they get a lot of criticism for that. So I encourage the young people like that in my life to keep digging, find a way. It is possible. I mean, look at me. Look at all I've been through divorces. I've been through job loss. I've been through, the crash where half of my investments went down to nothing. I had the horrible depression, and I'm still standing. And I didn't do that completely traditional route like everybody else did. But that doesn't you don't have to go that route so that you can wait until you're 65 years old so that you can finally start living. And I admire them for saying we're not going to do it the way other generations did it.
Well, I think this next tweet of yours is really going to sum up, your view on that. And this one is the one, it's possible to lead a happy life without being a millionaire and even without making 100K a year in some places. So I think that one really sums up kind of like your message, like you're saying, you're talking to the millennials, the Gen Zers, that
Mhm.
they don't have to do it the way others before them have done it. And there's places that you can like it's still like you said, you have a happy life still yet and not make $200,000 a year or anything.
And if you want to, that's great. Just do you. I was a
Yeah.
follower. As a young person, I followed the path that I was told that we needed to do. And I woke up one day and was like, hello, I'm not happy. What can I do to be a happier person? And letting go of a lot of the bling was part of that transformation.
This is kind of a little twist. I just thought of it just now, but I did a live this morning with some of my other friends and kind of just talking about finance and stuff. And we kind of talked about, is school or college a scam now? Like, I'm kind of just throwing this out there to you right now, but what's your
Mhm.
thoughts on that? Like, do you see in 10 years, do you think people are still going to be going to college and stuff?
And unless they do something about the cost of it, I think we're going to see a lot fewer people going. Unless you want to have a career in something like medicine or law, in which you have to have that behind you. I went to college as an older person just for fun because I didn't go straight out of high school. So I really value having that degree, but it means absolutely nothing in the work that I do today. I just did it because that was fun. Um, so I'm all about the experience versus the pathway to riches. You know, I've built an incredibly full, fun life doing what I want to do, and I work less than I ever have. And at one point people would say, "What are you doing now for work?" They would mean, and I would answer, "As little as possible."
Yeah. Well, yeah, you're
As
traveling the
little
country in your RV.
That was in my RV days. Yeah, I'm just doing
Yeah.
as little as possible, and it didn't bankrupt me. It didn't. I know people have crisis in their life where it does bankrupt them, and I don't mean to diminish that in any way at all. I'm just trying to express that there's a lot of angst around money. A lot of people are so stressed out over it, and I've somehow managed to let that go and I'm not over here rolling in the dough, you know? I mean, I'm not struggling by any means, but I think I have found some happiness in my life that's completely outside of income and investments. And I have them. I have them. I have rentals. It's just not an obsession with me anymore. I'd rather go to the beach, you know?
Yeah. Well, let's wrap things up, So I know you're on TikTok, you're on X, you have a newsletter, you said,
I
but your
do.
final tweet that I want to touch on is to kind of wrap things up is if your life was a commercial, what are you advertising? So what are you advertising and where can people find you?
I am advertising that it is possible to have less money stress. And that's the name of my newsletter, Less Money Stress. And the name of my company is called Values Based Finances because every decision that I make now, not in my former life, but every decision I make now is based on my values for what I want my life to look like. Before my transformation, my financial decisions were made to try to impress other people with my big house and my big car and my fancy vacations and all that. And that was not healthy in any way. So I have far less money stress today because I did a lot of digging to get down to what my core values about life are, and traveling is one of them. And the RV is a piece of that, getting me out there on the road like that. And that's the work. When I do one on work with people, we really do a lot of excavating into their childhood and what their parents' values were, and bring that forward into today to see how much of their own identity they have or how much of that parent imprint is still on them.
No
It
chance of
means,
documenting the RV life?
pardon?
No chance of documenting your RV travels or life or anything?
I did a lot of videoing when I was on the road, and I never published it anywhere. I never did. I think it could be a comedy channel because I did so many things wrong. I mean, I did some crazy shit when I was on the road with that RV. I mean, terrible. Like putting the car up on the tow dolly. Like the second time I ever did it, I jumped the tow dolly. Like I pushed the accelerator too hard, and that tow dolly jumped over the front wheels jumped over the tow dolly, and I had to get a tow truck with a crane to lift the car up off over that tow dolly.
Great.
I mean, I did some crazy stuff. I flooded the inside more than once. So yeah, it could be like an I Love Lucy episode of me in the RV.
Well, we'll be on the lookout for that YouTube channel. But as of now, where can they find you on X and TikTok?
Well, I'm just my name on X. It's Karla with a K. Karla Stamps, Stamps, like postage. On TikTok, I am values based finances on my business side, and then I have a personal channel that's redefining the dream, redesigning the dream because I'm done with I got fed up with the American dream, the rat race, and I created my own. So I redesigned the dream.
All right, I love it. I'm glad we got to connect, and
Enjoyed
everyone
it. Thanks.
go check her out. And everyone, thanks for doing this, and we'll be back again. And see you,
Thanks so
Karla.
much. Thank you. Bye.